Hi, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. We're trying to get more people really involved in IDSA UC this year since it has been active in recent years, and we wanted to give everybody a quick overview just to get people interested in joining. And at the end of the meeting, we'll be having elections to determine who's in leadership positions, so make sure to stick around for that if you're interested in being in one of those positions or just want to vote. We really thought it would be a great idea to have a speaker from the Cincinnati Professional Chapter of IDSA come speak. So I'll pass it over to Mira to introduce our speaker.
Hi. So joining us is the current IDSA Cincinnati Chapter Chair, Cat Rizzoni. She goes by Cat. After graduating from Ohio State with a BS in Industrial Design and a minor in Art History, Kat worked at Design Central in Columbus, Ohio, before moving to Cincinnati to work as an industrial designer at Kaleidoscope Innovation. Here she is passionate about using human-centered design to better understand the needs of the user, particularly in medical design. Welcome, Kat, and we're excited to have you. Thank you for presenting.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm going to try and get my screen share set up, and hopefully I am successful. So are you seeing both panels?
Yes, we are.
Hey, Kat. It's a little hard to hear you. Do you think you could turn up your microphone?
Yeah, let me actually, if you guys don't mind giving me a moment, let me get my headphones back.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
That's a lot better. Thank you so much.
Yep. Yes. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, let me get out of this presenter mode so that I can share then. Okay. All right. Can everybody see okay?
I'm not seeing your screen right now.
Okay. This is classic. How about now?
You're good.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, thank you guys so much for the introduction. I am really stoked to be here and get the chance to talk to you a little bit more about IDSA. So I will start off probably by telling you a little bit more about myself, who I am, what I do with the organization, and tell you a little bit more about not just what is IDSA, but what you can get out of it. And then finally, why should you care? I think that IDSA can help you benefit your career from the networking opportunities available in the organization. So starting off, I will tell you a little bit more about myself. I think Mira did a great job opening up. So, I currently work at Kaleidoscope Innovation here in Blue Ash. I know Jake has been by a couple times to speak to you guys, and Kaleidoscope is well connected with DAAP. I'm the black sheep of our company. I went to a different school, graduated from OSU, where I was the vice chair of our student chapter, and stuck around in Columbus at Design Central for a couple of years, where I was also the vice chair of the Columbus IDSA chapter. So in my 4 or so years of experience, working at 2 consultancies, I have had the chance to work with some really exciting brands and companies across a variety of categories. So you can certainly recognize some brands here, and then there's also some that are, a little bit quieter, but have some really exciting impact. So some of the medical work, is a little lower profile, but the projects are really exciting and make a big impact. When I was at Design Central for the first 3 years of my career, I really got to know the ropes of the consultancy design work. I learned a lot of the important frameworks for design thinking, and I was able to really hone my craft, making a lot of prototypes, particularly soft goods, for example. I did a lot of it was, funny, I worked a lot with P&G when I was in Columbus, and I moved to Cincinnati and promptly stopped working with them completely. But I did a lot of fem care and baby care, working on like diapers, pads, tampons, and I made a lot of those prototypes. So I got the opportunity to really hone my soft goods craft while I was at Design Central. But after a couple of years there, I was sort of ready for the next step in my career, and I moved down to Cincinnati to Kaleidoscope. And promptly found myself in a brand new world. I started thinking that I would be working on consumer goods, and the client that we had lined up that I was planning to start working with actually canceled the project the first week that I was working. And I found myself thrown completely into medical product design, and it was a ton of information really fast from someone with, no medical background at all. I hadn't been in a hospital since I was born, probably, no background. But I think that so many of the skills that we learn as designers, the frameworks that we have for executing our design work are applicable across the board. You can use them in so many different spaces. So I found that what I learned in my time, in school and at Design Central, those recipes for design development really served me well, even in a brand new space that I had no experience with. The way that we work really stays the same no matter where we are. And so it's been a really exciting year and a half at Kaleidoscope. I've gotten a chance to work on products that are, have a really big impact on people's lives in a way that consumer goods impact a lot of people in a little way. And some of the projects that I've worked on have impacted a couple of people in a really big way. And so it's an interesting way to kind of shift gears as a designer. So I'll kind of back up a little bit and talk about, when I was a student, what that looked like and why I got involved in IDSA in the first place. And so I was pretty recently, just like you guys, designing in a classic studio setting. I was at Ohio State. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with the program, but it's very small. You have like a foundations year, and there's a lot of students who join the foundations year. And then at the end, you actually have to apply to the major to get into it. And they only accept 16 to 18 students per major. So for the 3 remaining years of my ID education, I was with the same 15 other students. And in a lot of ways, it was really awesome. We got some, one-on-one time with our professors. We were a really close group, and we helped each other learn a lot through our various experiences. But something that I found was that it ended up being a little bit of a bubble. You only have the same handful of people critiquing your work, plus a professor. And you have a limited number of perspectives to get input and inspiration from. And I, this was only a couple of years ago, but even at that time too, social media wasn't quite as big for the design world as it is now. So there really wasn't this sense that you could look around on, the way you can today on Instagram and Behance, and really see what's out there, and what other students are doing, and, getting inspiration from the design world. It was definitely present, but it wasn't like this constant pressure the way that I feel like it is today. So this bubble really popped for me when I went to my very first district conference. So these are, you guys probably wouldn't have attended any of these. They stopped hosting the district conferences a year or 2 ago and replaced them with the themed deep dives at IDSA. But these used to be gatherings among the regional chapters. They used to be state-based. So now we're cities. So we're actually IDSA Cincinnati instead of Southern Ohio as we used to be. And then Southern Ohio, all of the Southern Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, these chapters would come together for a conference once a year. And this was like the big meet and greet, the big IDSA conference for each region. And then there was the national one, but this was like your opportunity to really get to talk to people. So one of our professors really encouraged us as students to attend. So we all piled in into somebody's mom's minivan and rented an Airbnb in Pittsburgh and drove to Pittsburgh for this conference. And at the conference, I mean, obviously it was awesome. We got a lot of really great content. I got to see, practicing designers sharing real work, which, as a student, hadn't seen a lot of at that time. But what really sparked this change for me was getting to meet the other student IDSA leaders. We at the conference, they set aside a room and said, okay, all the IDSA student leaders, go ahead, gather, share your learnings, tips and tricks, connect with the other students. And I realized how many more of us there were out there sharing really similar experiences that we could all kind of benefit from staying connected, from being involved with one another. And at this point, I think my perspective was just starting to broaden, realizing that there was a lot more out there outside of the little studio that I had been working in. And so I was starting to learn the value of creating a real network by going to events. And one thing leads to another. And I really feel that getting involved with IDSA was one of the most exciting things to happen to my career. I started traveling to events, closer to home. I would take the Greyhound bus to Chicago to attend events. You can see I have a snap here from the Women in Design Summit they held in 2018. And getting to come to something like this and see a whole room full of female designers was just this awesome validation that there are other people out there who are interested in the same things as me and who experience really similar, ways of filtering the idea industry. And, hearing the kind of exciting ideas that get you thinking big and engaging with others because you're so excited about what you're hearing. And, from Chicago, I started going further afield. I started attending events, as far out as the West Coast. I was flying out to San Francisco to attend stuff. And obviously that gets pricey and complicated. And this is over years of time. I only attend a couple events a year, but it has been such a meaningful way for me to engage with the community. And I want to share with you why I think that is such a benefit and really what it can do for you as well. So I'm going to kind of back it up a little bit and talk about the structure of IDSA. So to give you context, you are the school level there at the bottom. Your elected officers who you will help choose today will be the representatives of your school in the organization, and they will be responsible for creating programming and creating activities and events and putting out information for members at the student level. And then there's the chapter level, and this kind of presents it like a hierarchy, but we're actually more parallel to the school level. We don't oversee the student chapter. You have a student advisor who is responsible for that liaison role. And the chapter level is kind of this parallel support, and we do the same thing as the student chapter, but instead our audience is the local professional population. So we put on a couple events a year, and these can be anything like skill sharing conferences or talks or panels or, in-person events at local museums or studio tours, that kind of stuff. Usually they're a little larger in scale than the school level events since we have some funding on the chapter level. But again, the school level varies. I'm sure it was different at OSU than it will be at DAAP. And then just one level up, there's actually more organization that keeps going up from Corey, but Corey is also our district level leader. So she is, I was talking about that central district conference. So she's kind of in charge of the central level. So if we have any, want to reach out to national for more resources, Corey would be the person to talk to. So we, as the local professional chapter, side-by-side support the school level and then can help you access resources at the national level. So, all right, I think we kind of get an idea what IDSA is. We've all been to the Student Merit Awards, there's the bar crawls, the usual stuff that we're all familiar with. But I think that IDSA has the potential to be so much more for the ambitious young designer. I think that IDSA is the perfect platform to launch your career. And just from my own personal experience, I can really say that getting involved with IDSA gives you the kind of network that it takes years to develop through a traditional career. If I had just through my 2 consultancy experiences kept my networking within my own, professional sphere at work, I would certainly be connected to some awesome people, but I wouldn't have the kind of broad network that I have from being involved with IDSA. So I'm really going to kind of go into why I think that you guys should get involved with IDSA for the benefit of your own professional development. So we all know ID is a small industry. I am not the first person to tell you this, and I'm sure I will not be the last. But what does that really mean? There are only 42,000 industrial designers in the United States right now, according to the US Census data. Most cities have fewer than 1,000 industrial designers, except for maybe the top couple. There's really only a couple hundred in each city, especially depending on what kind of industries or companies are present. And it can be a little intimidating. I feel like you hear a lot of scary stuff like, oh, this industry is small, don't mess up, don't, rub people the wrong way or set a foot wrong, because, people will talk to each other. But I think that's, like a negative way of looking at it. I think it can be really positive. The smallness of this industry leads to connections in places that you would never expect. So like this photo shows some notes I took at a conference in San Francisco. This was the Square One conference hosted by Advanced Design. It started out as like a sketching skills-based conference, and it's grown since then to a larger endeavor. But I was listening to Norio Fujikawa speak, and he is the creative director of Astro, and he I didn't have any experience with him. I didn't know him personally, but during his talk, he mentioned that he used to work at Richardson Smith, which later became Fitch. And this was one of the really influential firms in Columbus that kind of shaped the design firms that grew out of Columbus. Design Central had been founded by somebody who used to work at Richardson Smith and Fitch. And, some of my bosses used to work there and knew Norio. And I was just so delighted by this crazy connection that someone in San Francisco had worked, with the same little firm back in, this wasn't even in Columbus. This was rural, outside of the city. And it was such a cool connection that I had to come up after and just say hello. And oh my gosh, how crazy is it that across the country that we have this shared connection. And now he and I are, connected, and I have this awesome conversation starter. And so it's just these examples that you never know who you'll run into because it is so small. And I also think another one of the huge benefits of the size of the industry is that you can make some really big ripples with your work. Whatever your passion is, whether that's creating, amazing realistic renderings, or playing with, exciting CMF, or, reaching out and doing design advocacy work, you have the opportunity to create really meaningful platforms for your work and your causes by leveraging the existing structures within IDSA. So this has been something that I have really prioritized, in my own work. And, like I said, this passion can be whatever sings to you. Maybe it's designing for disabilities. Maybe it's advocating for research in our spaces. But attending events and being part of the organization helped me to figure out what kind of a designer I wanted to be. And I learned that I'm somebody who wants to make space for design advocacy in my work and in my life. That's something I really value. And when we go about our day-to-day, in the studio, at school, at work, there's not always space to think about the big questions. We're thinking more about what needs to get done tomorrow, what's due next. But we don't think so much about the macro stuff. And at an event, you get the chance to really chew on some sticky questions, thinking about what is our impact through design? Who are we helping with our work? Who are we hurting? And what are the consequences of what we're putting out into the world? And I think attending events, for me and for others, has been a big part of deciding, what you can believe in and how you engage with your work. And so especially important, I think, for a young designer when you don't know what you want. And I think a lot of the times, too, there's stuff out there that you just aren't exposed to that you might love. If I had been exposed to medical design earlier, if I'd gone to a medical event, maybe I would have found that was a path I wanted to go down earlier. So it's certainly, worth engaging with these questions. It's also been an awesome opportunity to work with some of my favorite designers. If you get involved in the organizing side of things, you can create whatever events you want. And you can feature the designers that you admire. If you want to have a specific designer come speak at your studio, that can be a great way to open the door to that conversation, and plant seeds for your career that can grow later. This event here, I had T. Chang speak at a couple of years ago, and we didn't really stay connected afterwards, but we kind of recently touched base again and have started working together again. And it's things like that where, I got to say, hey, I'd love to pay you with IDSA money to come give a talk. And, she was really enthusiastic to fly out to Ohio and do something like that. But I never would have been able to, make that happen on my own dime, or even probably had the guts to introduce myself to one of my biggest design heroes. But when you're asking for help, people love that. They love helping. They love volunteering their time. And as a student, you have this secret, anybody will help a student. All you have to do is say oh, I'm a student. Can I pick your brain? Will you look over my portfolio? Can we talk? And it's such a good way to start that conversation. And really what it all comes down to is getting involved in whatever way feels right to you. I'm not going to lie, when I started out, I was really a totally silent observer at events. I probably attended 5 or 6 before I had the guts to introduce myself to somebody. But it's an awesome start because a lot of IDSA's content is skills-based, and you can learn and get inspired and fire yourself up. I really feel like a conference every couple of months keeps me zesty and able to create really exciting work because I'm so inspired from whatever we talked about. So, just listening in is an awesome start. Once you've gone to a couple and you feel more comfortable, starting those conversations is awesome as well. It's really easy for a professional to have a conversation with a student. We kind of already know what to ask you. What are you doing for your thesis? Have you had any cool co-ops? There's sort of some easy questions already set up. So don't be afraid to, walk up to a professional. Odds are, if they're standing by themselves, they are also shy and don't know anybody at the event and, don't have someone to talk to. So they'd be delighted to come chat with a student. So bring your business cards or your Instagram handle at the ready because, nowadays everything's different. But, follow up on those people that you meet, schedule an online coffee, see if they have the time, to chat with you later, or just follow up with an email. And it doesn't need to go anywhere. You don't need to create anything out of every connection. You can just say, hey, hello, it's nice to meet you. Let's stay connected on LinkedIn. And then maybe someday in the future, that connection will come around and they might think of you when they have a job opening, or you might run into each other at another event, and it all pays dividends. So this is kind of advice for the distant future, because who knows how long this is going to last. This photo makes me so nervous looking at it now, how close we're all standing, breathing each other's air. But this was it's just another awesome event that I got to go and meet a bunch of people that in a place that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten to go to. And when the time comes to do physical events, again, I encourage you to attend and to mingle. There's a special spark that comes from, being involved in something like this in person, whether it's a setup meeting or the event itself. And I'll give another pro tip. This is my favorite way to connect with people. If you meet somebody at 2 separate events, you are officially design friends, because a lot of the time folks will come alone or they'll only know 1 or 2 people. So if you're scanning the room and you see somebody that you recognize from that last event, you're going to walk over and reconnect with them. And then you'll have this feeling of, camaraderie, oh yeah, we totally know each other already, even if you only shook hands and met at the last event. So staying connected on LinkedIn or, however you follow it up is a great way to remember who those people are. I don't know about you guys. I'm terrible with faces and names. I do a lot of hasty looking people up on LinkedIn before I approach them to make sure I'm going to talk to the right person. Whatever your strategy is, I would really encourage you to put yourself out there. And all this is to say, you get out of it what you put into it. Pending the energy and involvement level that you have and are interested in, exerting, you can create some really amazing opportunities for yourself. And, nobody asked me to write articles or organize or host events. I would attend and choose to create content out of it that was unsolicited and then say, hey, I made this. Does anybody want to see it? And oftentimes that'll get picked up. You can make your own opportunities. If you want a famous designer to, you want to learn from them or you want them to speak, all you have to do is invite them. Want to get free tickets to an event? Just offer to write an article covering it, which is my favorite trick. So, whatever that niche is for you, the world is your oyster. It really, there's no limit to how expansive you can take your involvement. You can, create your own initiatives and your own little side hustles and organizations out of IDSA if that's something that you're really passionate about, or you can just attend an event every once in a while and stay connected casually. Whatever that choice is, it will benefit you and your career in the long run. So just a couple last advanced tips and tricks. This is like, if you want to do more than just attending events and like soaking up all that IDSA goodness, these are some real like pro tips. So finding a mentor is an awesome one. There are a lot of platforms to find a career mentor who can help you develop your career and build your network. There are LinkedIn groups. The IDSA website has directories of members and organizations based geographically. You can suss out people on Instagram or on Core 77 or on forums. There are a lot of places out there with IDSA members who are already committed to the betterment of the community, and that includes mentoring students. You can get involved online. Some of those groups that I mentioned, there are a lot of online communities you can join if you're interested. And I see a lot of those as like perfectly prepackaged networks. It's not IDSA, but like the Minor Details Discord or the Advanced Design Discord. Those are a great way to spark cool conversations with designers that you might not otherwise get access to casually chat with. And then the launching point for my career and what I would recommend the most to you is to get involved in organizing the events. This is a game changer. You get to be the person who reaches out to the big name speakers, who gets to talk to cool studios and organizations, and you put your name out there as a leader, and you get a lot of really amazing opportunities that come from that, and it gives you a sort of a platform to speak from. And as you're growing and developing and figuring out what your values are and what you care, it gives you the platform to speak to that work and to boost whatever that passion is for you. Now, all that being said, you cannot get anything out of IDSA if you are not feeling your best. So take care of yourself. This year and last year has been absolutely crazy for everybody, and there's a lot of understanding for that in the community. So all the networking in the world is not going to help if you are stressed and overwhelmed. So please save space for your schoolwork, save space for your health and your happiness. Surviving Design School is a full-time job, and we're here to provide information, education, support, networking, but we don't want to add more stress. We're encouraging you to get involved with IDSA, but it's for your benefit, and you should be the person to decide if it's the right use of your time and energy. So I just want to say thank you all so much for giving me the chance to come speak to you today and share some things about IDSA that I'm really excited about and enthusiastic. And I hope that I've maybe convinced a couple of you to get a little more involved. I think it's an excellent opportunity to boost your career and really put yourself out there in a community that is so welcoming to ambitious young people. So thank you so much, and I would love to answer any questions that you have.
I'd just like to say thank you so much, Kat. I know I learned a ton from that presentation, and I'm sure everybody else did too. So, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Is there anything that you guys are looking forward to seeing in the community? Anything that you would like to see in upcoming IDSA events, either on the student level or the chapter level? Or just questions in general?
I actually, had a question. I heard you were saying, was it Core 77 is like a good place to seek out mentors?
I don't remember if it's Core 77 or Coreflot that has the forum, but there's a design forum, and it has a lot of really knowledgeable people who, are really free with their advice. They're really willing to give out their time and energy. So that could be a good place to find a designer to connect with, or if you have somebody that you already look up to, you can reach out to them.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if you covered this at the beginning. I was kind of making lunch, but is there like a time commitment weekly or like something that you expect the students to put in? Just so I can I'm thinking about really joining and putting more effort into it. But I'd just like to know about kind of time commitment stuff.
Yeah, depends on how kind of ambitious you are. I would say one thing that I recommend, as like I've been volunteering my time with IDSA for like 6 years now, and I would actually say take it a little easier than you think you can handle, because one of the biggest issues is like if people like overcommit, you can get burnt out, and then you sort of like lose the spark that makes it fun. So I would say that time commitment depends on the kind of time that you're, interested in putting into it. If you really want to get super involved, a couple hours a week is enough to make cool events happen on a couple monthly basis. We probably put on like 4 events a year. And if I think about like just the event hosting related work, it's probably only an hour or 2 a week if you average it out. It's definitely more as you get closer to the events. But you could easily spend a lot more time too if you want to make like really awesome assets or put out like really good email marketing, things like that. So yeah, it's kind of like choose your own adventure. But you can have a meaningful commitment at just like a couple hours a week. It doesn't need to be huge.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah, I'm glad you're interested. And I'm also happy to answer any non-IDSA related questions as well, if you just have general, design career stuff.
I guess I have a question, just from a senior perspective. I'm last semester out of 5 years in DAAP. I'm just wondering, do you have any I don't know, advice for the seniors with IDSA, things that we can still benefit from, things that we should be doing to maybe help underclassmen. Just wondering kind of like what a senior's role would be in an IDSA perspective.
Yeah, I think if you think about the goals of IDSA, and it's an organization that promotes education and advocacy and just generally uplifting the industry, as a senior, you have so much knowledge and learning that underclassmen want and, would like to chat with you. So maybe setting up ways either through your IDSA chapter or just casually to, connect with underclassmen and share with them more about what your experience has been like in school. I think you can provide some value for your classmates that way and share some of your wisdom as, an outgoing senior. And then also on the benefit of your end, thinking about, bridging into your professional career. If you've thought about kind of a geographic region that you're going to be looking at applying to jobs in, whether that's Cincinnati or some other city, you can get in contact with the IDSA leadership in, your city of choice and just start having conversations. Ask them what the design scene looks like in that city. What are the, consultancies or corporations that are active in the organization? Who's making an impact? Who's enthusiastic? And you might be able to get access to some insights that can help guide your job search as well. I think there's definitely a lot of wisdom that you learn things that you can't Google online, like if a company or a part of a community is aligned with your own ideals and what you want to see in your career. So you can definitely use some of those resources while in that in-between stage between like matriculating out of the student chapter, but you're not quite part of the professional org yet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
I have a small question about the networking side of it. I've been very shy, and I'm always so nervous about talking to people, especially those of the industry, because I know we're so small that you remember someone almost usually regularly. So how do you, in a way, like how do you build the confidence to talk to some of your favorite designers out there? Because
Yeah, that is really hard. And it's like, I mean, I feel it too. And even like being out here as a like, oh, successful practicing industrial designer, like I'm still anxious when I go to conferences to like introduce myself to people I've never met or talk to people that I perceive as being like really cool. So I mean, I think part of it is just like having the guts to do it the first couple times and it goes well. And then you realize, okay, exhale, it wasn't, quite as bad as I'd made it up to be. And sometimes going into that conversation with an escape strategy or like an empty cup so that you can be like, okay, this is awkward. I don't know what to say. Oh, gotta go fill this up. Bye. Or gotta go to the bathroom or whatever, that can make it easy enough to just like start the conversation. I like go back and forth on recommending going to events with other people because sometimes if you go to an event like with a group of students, it can be really good for like supporting your confidence and making you feel like you are like belong and are present and have people there to support you. But then sometimes it can hurt you from like branching out and talking to new people. So I would balance it. If you have a friend who can attend an event, physical or virtual with you, maybe just like one person so that you're not alone and they've got your back, but you still have enough room to branch out. And I will also encourage virtual events are like way less scary than actually like walking up to somebody at a cocktail mixer. So you can connect with people online and then when you meet them in person, you're like, I already know you, so it's not scary. That's been my strategy at least.
no, those are actually a lot of good tips because my parents would always tell me just go up and talk to them. It'll be less scary, and I was like, no, that's not how it works.
I know. Yeah, you need strategies for sure, because obviously, like all the just do it in the world isn't going to make it any less scary.
Gotcha. Thank you so much also for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I have a question. I was wondering, where do you go, like, if you want to get involved? Is there like a website, or you have to do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, idsa.org is the IDSA website. A lot of the actual like organizing, because that website doesn't have like a way to like log in and talk to people, chat, like interact. It's not like a network. It's more like a repository of the like articles and resources, links to events, membership directories. So if you want to do the like connecting side, you can join, there's like special interest groups on LinkedIn that based on IDSA has special interest groups. So like if you're interested in medical design, you can join the medical design special interest group. I would recommend also going on Instagram. Oh, awesome. It looks like there's a link for you there. Yeah, you might have to do a little bit of hunting for the actual connections. It's not quite, maybe that makes a case for there being an easier, some way to connect with other IDSA members socially. It's an interesting question, but for now, you kind of got to do a little bit of hunting. But most people will have their, like, if they're a member of IDSA, they will have it on their LinkedIn or, you can also, industrial designers know what IDSA is, even if they're not members. And if like, oh, I'm an IDSA student chapter member and I would love your help, so they would say yes, even if they're not part of the organization. Yes, so hopefully that answered it for you.
Yeah, that did. And also I was wondering, kind of like as far as DAAP goes, like is there like when you have events going on, like people who like set up the events, are they students or is it like more like people working in the profession?
It can be a little bit of both. Like the elected leaders of this incoming student chapter will be connected with me and with the professional chapter. So we'll be there as a resource to help, first-time event hosters host an event and, have a little extra backup and support. Like for instance, the professional chapter helps to host DAAPworks. But the majority of the events would be hosted and sort of organized by the student chapter, but with a little support.
Yeah, thank you very much. That answers my question.
Awesome.
If no one else has any other questions, we can move into the election portion of the meeting. Thank you again, Kat, for coming, and it was very valuable to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Please feel free to share my contact information with everybody, and I really encourage you all to find me on LinkedIn and reach out to me. I would be delighted to support all of you and do what we can to contribute to the community. So, good luck with your elections, everybody, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you, Kat, for
Bye.
everything.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.